Welcome back to Listen Up Podcast at Grace Christian University, where we take deep dives into student lives. Welcome back to Listen Up Podcast. Today we have a special alumni guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Taylor Partridge, and I went to Grace.
Sure did.
In 2019. Well, graduated in 2019.
Well, that answers my first question, but what degree did you graduate with?
I graduated with a human services degree. No emphasis, just a flat-out human services degree.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
How did you decide on human services?
It's really funny. I came specifically to Grace just because I was like, I liked the degree choice because it was vague enough where I could try little bits and pieces of everything, because you touch base on sociology, psychology, counseling, criminal justice, and I was like, oh, I can look at all the jobs that I'm considering in one degree, and hopefully that will help me decide in the long run what I want to specify in.
Yeah.
But it's actually been really beneficial because now a lot of jobs are asking for human services degrees because they're so well-rounded in that fact, which has been beneficial, which is awesome. And I knew I wanted to work with people. And so that was the main goal, was I want to work with people. I don't want to commit to social work. I don't want to commit to psychology because I don't know if I want to be a therapist. And so it was just a good first path for me to take.
Mm-hmm. Have you been able to use the degree?
Yes. So I guess you can say I was using my degree prior to my job I have now.
Okay.
During college, I was a part-time caregiver. So I would go to people's houses and take care of them in their homes, the elderly. So that was using my degree because I'm still working with people.
Right.
But now that I graduated, I work at Goodwill Industries as a career coach for people with disabilities. So I help them find jobs I build their resume, I help them find jobs in the community, and then I help with their training process and then check in on them. So I'm using more of my degree because there's a lot more paperwork involved with that. And human services does prepare you for that, just because you write a bunch of papers all the time.
Nice.
So,
did you dream this would be your future job?
No, I didn't even know career coaches were a thing until I applied to the job. Honestly, I didn't know where God wanted me to head next. I just was very burned out from being a caregiver and not using my degree to the fullest. And I was just like, okay, well, what do you have for me next? I just know I want to be walking side by side with people on their daily lives, but I don't know what capacity you want me to be doing that at. So it was all perfect timing when this job happened. A client passed away right when I had an interview for the Goodwill position. And it was my long-term client that I saw almost daily during 2020. So God was closing the door so I could have this new opening. And that was it was amazing to watch it unfold. It was very sad to watch it unfold, but I am so grateful for waiting on God's timing and not being like, I'm so sick of this job, I'm just going to work at Starbucks just to fill my time. Because now I'm feeling very fulfilled in my job. I don't know if it will be my forever position. There's lots of room to grow in different areas I could work at Goodwill, so I could see myself trying something new there. Or if we're meant to move in the future, then maybe try something new there. Just as long as I'm working with people, then I will be happy.
Okay. I was going to ask, what's your favorite part of the job? But maybe it's that.
My favorite part is I've had some really incredible participants. Working with people with disabilities is just a whole different ball game, because disabilities look different for everyone. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's a mental disability, sometimes it's learning disability. You just don't know until you meet the person. And just being so proud of them personally, seeing how they've overcome all these barriers that they've had in their life. And I had a participant, which really has been motivating to me, look at me and say, I don't want someone to look at me for my disability, because they see her disability right when she walks in the door.
Yeah.
She's like, I want them to look at me and get to know me and recognize I'm capable of doing a job, because a lot of people were denying her because she uses a walker and stuff like that. She's like, I'm capable, and people just don't realize that. And just to be able to help her navigate through interviews and to help empower her to get a job, and now she's working and doing awesome. Those success stories make my job worth it and make it fun.
Yeah.
Because there are hardships.
Yeah, I bet.
Don't get me wrong, but just the people who are so motivated and full of life and know that even though they have a disability, they can overcome what's going on in their life. It's been really awesome to walk alongside them. But yeah, working with people.
Love it. So when you were choosing schools, was Grace your first choice?
No. Grace was not my first choice. My first choice was Spring Arbor.
Okay.
And then I was going to look into Cornerstone. Grace was kind of my back burner. I ended up applying just because there was an early application scholarship that you could get. I'm like, I'm probably not going to go here, but what if I do? So I'll just turn it in and we'll see what happens. Got accepted into Spring Arbor, Cornerstone, and Grace. And went to I went to Spring Arbor, stayed the night, had a horrible experience. It wasn't like the worst, but it showed me it wasn't the community I wanted to be involved in. And I believe God did that just so that I would end up at Grace, because I was very determined to go to Spring Arbor. I'm like, this is the environment I think I want and the path that I think I want. But it was very obvious at the end of my weekend there that I was not feeling as comfortable with that decision as I thought I would be. Then I visited Cornerstone, and I left halfway through my tour with my mom. I said, not the place I want to be at. It's just not the environment I want to be at. And then I came to tour Grace last, of course. And right when you walk in, it was just so friendly. I felt so comfortable. And then Dr. Shaw sat down with me to tell me about the Human Services program. And when he was telling me about it and telling me how it touches on so many different degrees, I'm like, that's exactly what I need right now. Because if I would have gone to Cornerstone or Spring Arbor, it would have been social work, which I didn't know if that's exactly what I wanted to do. So this opened more avenues for me for my future. Yeah. But it was definitely the friendly environment that won me over. Felt like a big family when I was here.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
If you're not from Michigan, I grew up in Allegan. It's 45 minutes south of Grand Rapids. So not terribly far away, but far enough away that I didn't want to go home every weekend.
Yeah, it's a good distance.
Yeah.
I get that. What was your family dynamic like?
For most of my life, I grew up with a single mom and then 3 other siblings. I am second in line, so it's my older sister Dysa, who also went to Grace, actually. Then me, and then my little brother Joseph, and then my sister Bella. And Joseph and Bella are adopted from Guatemala, so we have a little diverse family. I actually have been asked if I'm the adopted one because I am fair-skinned and blonde, and my older sister has a darker complexion because she took after more of my mom. But yeah, it's just a funny tidbit, I guess, about that. But I really enjoyed being a part of a diverse family.
Yeah. Tell me about how the adoption went for your siblings.
Yeah, we started adopting Bella when she was still in her mommy's belly. So Bella was actually able to come home at 7 months old. Okay. So she has really only known us. And Bella and I did not get along for a while just because I was the baby for 6 years. Bella's 6 years younger than I am. And so I wanted that attention and all of that. Mom said it was just like oil and water for a long Better now, for
Good.
sure. This last year, our relationship really has flourished, which has been awesome to see. And then Joseph was adopted from an orphanage, and he came home at 3.5 years old.
Okay.
And his journey is a lot different, just in the sense he had more medical needs that needed to be met. He was practically deaf when he came, blind in one
wow.
eye. So he had to correct his vision, correct his hearing, and now he's doing awesome. And he actually was, I guess, diagnosed, but told he has autism later
Okay.
in life. We didn't know until my freshman year of college, actually.
Wow.
So he was a teenager when we found out. He's very high functioning, but it definitely showed us that the reason communication was so off with him all his life, when he was really little, like he didn't really make good eye contact, or he
Yeah.
didn't like hugs all the time. And you're like, you're a little kid. Like,
Mm.
you need to be doing those things,
Yeah.
which we think was kind of beneficial for him in the sense of he learned social skills, because my mom was very like adamant about, we want you to be able to look people in the eye when you talk to them. And now
Yeah.
he does really well with communicating with other people. And he knows himself well enough to go, hey, I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not. And can you elaborate on that? And he's just a really incredible individual, growing through that, and only finding out in his teenage years
Yeah.
that he has been dealing with that. He's just flourished with that. But
Mm.
yeah, it's weird because I don't think of myself having adopted siblings because they've been in my life for so long,
Right.
until someone, I go, oh, this is my sister, and they're like, what?
You sure?
Like, oh, yes, she's from Guatemala. But
What was it like growing up with siblings from a different country?
not too different, just because they are younger. They were
Right.
younger when they came. I would say it added more depth into our family, in the sense of we grew to just love different cultures very easily. I grew up wanting to be a missionary kid kind of around the time we started adopting Bella, and just learning about different cultures and learning about Guatemala as a whole, and being able to visit there when I was older, and just loving on those people. And it's been really neat. It's definitely opened our family up to more conversations with a lot of people about adoption, because adoption is not easy.
Yeah.
So there have been a lot of challenges within our family because of adoption, but totally worth it. I can't imagine my life without my siblings, because they feel like blood to me. And
Right.
and again, it's mainly because they've been in my life since they were so little, that they've always been my family. So
what is a memory from your childhood that still makes you smile today?
A memory I really enjoy about my family is my mom was very intentional about making every day a little different. In the sense, I don't remember what all the days were, but Monday was Mail Monday. So we had to write a letter, handwritten letter, to a loved one and send it out. And I really appreciate that, because now I love letters, and would like to get back into doing that. I've been really bad about it because I think that's a dying art. So I'm really glad she had us doing that, and it connected us to our older relatives who really only had means of getting letters and stuff like that. And then the other one I remember is Thankful Thursday. She had she had a notebook, and I'm wondering if she did this during a season where it was a harder for our family, but we had a notebook where you had to write to a different person in the house saying why you're thankful for them on Thursday, and then you'd leave it on their pillow the following Thursday. And so everyone would get a nice thing written about them and why that family member was thankful for them. And it was fun because recently we found that notebook again, because my mom's in the process of moving. And it was just cute to read, like, I'm thankful, my little brother, I'm thankful for Taylor because she's so nice. And it's like stuff like that. And it's something I will treasure always. And I do think it helped the sibling dynamic as well. And also just getting little sweet notes from your parents as well is just something that I'll cherish always as well. So
So cute.
and then of course pizza and movie night and game night on Fridays. I feel like most families do that.
Yeah. We love it though.
Yep.
That's so sweet. What were some of the challenges and tough moments from your childhood?
Specifically when I was 10, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. It was stage 4 when we found out, I'm pretty sure. We found out in, I think it was May, maybe a little later, and then he passed away in September. So it was a very,
Wow.
very aggressive form. I was 11 by the time he passed away, and that obviously is a big tragedy
Yeah.
to happen in your family. And that changed the whole dynamic because my dad was the main provider in our household. And then my mom had to step up. And a week later, my sister actually turned 13. So my mom literally started the teenage years as a single mom. And she kind of jokes about it now. She's like, of course he left me. Like, he didn't want to deal with teenage girls. So it's a joke now, but in all seriousness, it was very hard, very emotional. But it was awesome during that time of my dad progressing with his cancer spreading to see how your community shows up for you, to see how God really will give you a sense of peace and comfort during that time was incredible. I still admire my dad to this day. He was a great example for us because he was determined. He was like, the Lord can heal me. Like, I still believe the Lord can heal me. So he got up every single day diligently and was reading his Bible every single day. And like, most of my memories waking up in the morning was the Bible was already out on the table and he had already read. And just seeing his faithfulness to Christ during that time, where I think you either stray away from God during that time or you cling to him, that he clung to him and said, I believe you can heal me, but if it doesn't happen, I rest in the peace knowing that you're going to take care of my family. Because he really was holding on till his last days. Like, the Lord can still heal me. And we're like, you need to start accepting that you're going home to see the Lord. Because my mom, she even told, she's like, I had to fight for passwords from him so that I knew how to pay our bills and stuff like that on his last week of life, because he was so determined that he was going to make it. So I just really admire his faith in the Lord in that, and that he truly believed that God was going to be a healer for him. And ultimately he was. He went to heaven. No more pain, no more suffering. Left my mom with teenage girls, but here we are. We turned out okay. So.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. How did you and your family cope with the loss of your dad?
My mom has dealt with a lot of grief in her life prior to losing my dad. So she was able to share with us that laughter really can get you. Laughter's the best medicine. And I think that's great. I think I suppressed a lot of feelings because of that mentality. I personally did not handle the loss well. I kept it to myself, that we obviously all cried together, but you kind of have to start moving. The next day comes and you have to start moving forward. And you're going to have things that creep up in your life. Like, I remember I would hear the back door open, and that's where my dad would come home from work, and we'd all whip around like, oh, dad's not home. And it was those everyday little things that you have to get used to and go, okay, it's okay if the door creaks and it's not him, and stuff like that. But I would say my mom was very strong for all of us, and I appreciate her for that. But I want to advocate that if you have a loss like that, your children and you should all go to counseling. I was offered it through hospice, but as a child, you feel uncomfortable like, you just lost your dad, like,
Right.
you don't wanna talk about it.
Mhm.
You don't understand I was 11, I didn't understand the
Right.
concept of counseling, but I was the one making the choice. Like, "Do you want counseling?"
Mm.
"No, I don't want counseling." And I have told Ethan many times, like, that's one of my biggest regrets
Mm.
was I needed to talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, so I avoided those feelings to the point of I was really angry at God. I was really angry. Um, Became very bitter in the fact that he took my dad away.
Mm.
Said very spiteful, hateful things to God, and um, just was like, Lord, I hate you. I don't understand why you would take my dad. I don't understand why someone who loved you so much would be
Mm.
taken away from his family who needs him. And just very angry. But I know my older sister more clung to the Lord and like
Mm.
really focused on him, but no one realized how bitter I was during this because I was very quiet about it. And those bitter feelings and Satan feeding you lies led
Mhm.
to suicidal thoughts. And I never fully acted upon it, but it was definitely frequent contemplation for
Mm.
me, which feels crazy to say now looking at it because I was 11.
Yeah.
And you look at if you have children, you look at your children and you're like, they can't feel that way. They don't know what that
Mhm.
is. I didn't even know what the word suicide was, but I knew I didn't want to be here anymore
Wow.
because I was like, well, I know that I've accepted Christ, so I have to be going to heaven. Even though
Mm.
I'm mad at you, God, I would rather not be on this earth, rather be in heaven with my dad than being here. And I think people need to recognize that children have those feelings and they have those
Mhm.
big feelings and that they need to be talking about what's going on and have a safe space.
Mhm.
Something I feel like I need to advocate for because when I hear about younger kids feeling those now that I'm older, I'm like,
Yeah.
how do they know those feelings? I'm like, oh wait,
Mhm.
I was one of them. I was a child dealing with that, but I think in my mind I had to grow up so fast that
Mm.
I wasn't that young in my head. But then when I really think about it, I'm like, no, I was 11. I was 11 and I needed someone and
Mm.
I no longer trusted the Lord in my life. And that really stung, and Satan
Mm.
really took a grip on my heart because of that. Um, but I was blessed to be able to go to Christian camps growing up.
Mhm.
So I grew up going to Camp Beach Point in Allegan, but after the loss of my dad, we started going to Lake Ann in Traverse City, and that was really neat. Totally recommend camp for kids to go to, but also if you're a college student working at camp, such a cool experience. It definitely
Mm.
changes lives. There is a I was at one of my low points when I went to Lake Ann, and yes, you're gonna have fun, you're gonna be in the rhythm, and I feel like you kind of always have kind of a Jesus moment when you're at camp in the sense like
Mhm.
I need to reconcile this in my life. And
Yeah.
for me, it was the bitterness I was holding on to. And there's a statue at Lake Ann where it looks like God's hand is coming down and reaching for a
Mm.
human hand. And I remember just standing in front of it and thinking, you never left me. You've been holding
Mm.
your hands out to me this whole time while I was running the opposite direction, saying, Taylor, come home.
Oh,
Taylor, I'm your father. Like, it's okay. And, um, sorry.
you're good.
But it was really a powerful moment to really feel God's presence finally after a year or two of just being like, I don't like you right now.
Mm.
And to finally be like, you are my dad. I am fatherless, but you are my father. And
Mm.
accepting that was a pivotal moment for me. Um, Really, it helped set me on fire for Christ again. Because, like I said earlier, like I wanted to be a missionary. I wanted to
Mhm.
spread the love of the Lord. I loved evangelizing to my friends, but in that moment, it was like, what's the point if God does abandon you in those moments? And
Mm.
that moment was like, He doesn't abandon me. He was here
Yeah.
the whole time. He is my friend when I don't feel like I have friends. He is my father when I know I don't have a father anymore.
Mm.
And it's been really cool. We've been talking about it a lot, but it is really neat that in different seasons of your life, you learn different names of God. We hear
Mm.
them growing up, but we don't feel them.
That's so
So,
true.
in that point in my life, it was definitely God is my father.
Mhm.
And then later in life, it was God is my provider. And I feel like he's been
Mm.
my provider since my dad's kind of passed away, just because with being a single mom and all of that, and just experiencing those instead of just hearing about them. And like,
Right.
you don't know God as your comfort until you really need him as your comfort. And
Yeah.
so just being able to look at my history and being able to say, I've experienced a lot of those names at this point, and
Mm.
that's a gift I should be holding on to and not look at as, oh, Taylor, you have a sad life. It's like,
Mm.
no, I've gotten it to experience God in so
Yeah.
many different ways, and that's incredible. And I will hold on to that forever.
Mm.
It has been really cool. Um, yeah, just to see that flourish and accept that my life isn't neat and tidy
Mhm.
from start to finish, but that God really has saved me from myself in a lot of things. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, revealing different names to me has been just really an awesome experience.
That's beautiful. When did you come to Christ?
I accepted Christ into my life when I was 6 years old. I remember being in the car and being like, Mom, can I ask Jesus into my heart?
Aw.
And she was like, No, you're too young. And
Oh.
I'm like, Oh, okay. And like, if you know my mom, you're like, make it like it kind of makes sense. But at
Right.
the same time, most parents would be like, Yes, you
Yeah.
love Jesus, yes. But I grew up going to the church, so it makes sense that I fell in love with the stories that I was hearing and
Mm.
all of that. Um, but yeah, it's just funny looking back that my mom said that, but the urgency of it never left.
Hmm.
And so when I went to bed that night, and as a child, of course, you're wanting to be up anyways, right? But
Mhm.
I just remember the urgency of like, no, now's the time. Like, now's the time to
Mm.
trust in the Lord. And so I got out of bed, walked out, like eyes kind of open because I've been in the dark for a long time. My parents are watching Seinfeld.
Yep.
That's a very vivid memory. And I crawl into the lazy boy with my dad. I'm like,
Mhm.
I want to ask Jesus into my heart. And he was like, all right, then let's do it, Taylor. And then, of course, he turned off Seinfeld, and then I
Right.
asked Jesus to come into my life. Um, but I would say when my meaningful relationship with the Lord started was that pivotal moment of um, realizing the Lord, like God had not left me in my
Hmm.
darkest point, and recommitting my life to Him at Lake Ann and being like, no, you are enough. You are who I choose to worship. You are who I choose to honor and follow because you didn't leave me, and I
Mhm.
understand that now. Um, and yeah, so I would say 6 is when the faith started officially, but probably closer to 13 is when I would say my faith was reignited for the Lord.
Yeah. Did you have any mentors during this time of your life?
Yeah, I was it's kind of funny. I have always been drawn to the older ladies at my my church.
Hmm.
They're very near and dear to my heart, especially the ones who are still around. But there is one woman in particular when my dad was sick with cancer. She took me under her wing. And
Mm.
so, like I said, I was 11. She's well into her 80s,
Okay.
hanging out with an 11-year-old like we're best friends. Um,
Aw.
I would walk to her house from elementary school because she lived so close to it, and she would have a snack ready for me, and then we would go to church together, or we one vivid memory is she randomly decided that I wanted to go to Curves with her for some reason. So we went to Curves together, and
Oh.
so it was me working out with a bunch of older
Yeah.
ladies.
Heck yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. She added so much life in a very dark period in
Hmm.
my life, and most hilarious woman in the whole world. She I miss her often just because of how near and dear she was to me.
Yeah.
She passed away when I was in high school, my senior year.
Okay.
So she mentored me that whole time, and I was able to volunteer with her a lot at church and just have
Mm.
that really close bond. And she believed in me so much, but to a point where it was like, okay, Liz, like, I love you, but I cannot meet that standard. She was determined that I was going to go to West Point, and if you know me, no. Like I'm not going to a military school. Um but she thought I could be a nurse, which I agree
Okay.
now looking back, like I have traits of being that I could be a nurse, but
Mhm.
at that point I was like, no way.
Yeah.
No way. She's like, I have connections. I can get you in. And I was like, no. But it was someone who saw me when I felt like I was invisible, someone who
Mm.
intentionally sought me out and showed me that I was loved when I did not feel lovable. And
Mm.
so she will always be a true friend to me. She was actually brought up to me recently at a wedding, and because her best friend was there, and we both were like, oh my gosh, we just miss her
Mm.
often. It was nice. I found a letter from her recently, and I was like reading it and melting into it just because I miss her words of encouragement. But
Mhm.
during that time specifically, she was always there, always present, and I can't thank God enough for putting her in my life.
Mm. Yeah. What were your high school years like?
High school was a journey. Good and bad, but I would say for the most part I loved my high school experience. I had a really great group of friends. I was a band geek. I was in marching
Yeah.
band. I was in concert band, and that's where all my friends met. But we were also in the advanced classes together and stuff, so we were able to have conversations outside of band as well.
Mhm.
But God really gave me such a great group of people in my life.
Mm.
They were not Christians, and that's
Okay.
something I always wanted. I wanted girlfriends who were Christians, and I wanted to be able to connect with people on that level, and I didn't really have that in a youth group or anything.
Mhm.
But my friends, they weren't Christians, but they had morals that were not outlandish like
Right.
other people at my school. So it was very nice that we were able to have wholesome fun throughout all of high school.
Yeah.
They obviously desired other things, and I was able, like, I discerned when I should add into a conversation or
Right.
whatnot, because I'm not going to agree with everything they're talking about. And
Mhm.
but I found it as a way to be a light for Christ by example through those years, and it opened the door for a lot of good conversations, and I'm still friends with a few of them today, closer than others, but
Mhm.
I can always reach out to them and we'll respond to each other. But yeah, very close knit. I
Yeah.
had a lot of fun with
Mm.
them. I miss those fun teenage nights, but
Yeah.
I mean, you grow up, but
Yeah,
it's okay.
you sure do.
You sure do.
What was one of your favorite memories?
um, man, I have so many good memories from high school, but just the laughter that I had all the
Mm.
time with them, there was never a dull moment. I if we were all over at my house, we were laughing throughout the whole night, and
Mm.
um I'll never forget that because through joy you get through things. Like I talked about how laughter is a good medicine, and
Mhm.
there's still trials and hardships that you go through in high school just because you're a teenager
Yep.
figuring life out, and girls can be petty, boys can be
Yeah.
trouble. So I mean, drama happens, but
Mhm.
when you have such a solid group of friends that can be there for each other,
Mhm.
it was a gift in itself.
Yeah.
um so I don't have a specific favorite
Okay.
memory, but probably I talk about marching band probably the most just because it was fun to travel around together. And there's one story of when I decided my senior year, I hung out with a big group of guys pretty frequently, and I just had a ball with them. And
Mm.
uh, we decided one night we're going to go kayaking down the Kalamazoo River at midnight.
All
It'll
right.
be fun. And that's a very vivid memory because, of course, when I'm getting into the canoe flips soaking wet in jeans, soaking wet sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Just not fun. Get poison ivy from that trip because apparently poison ivy was very close to the water.
Nice.
But it was a grand time. I
Yeah.
would do it again in a heartbeat with those guys because it was so fun. But just silly things,
Yeah.
stupid things that teenagers do.
Mhm.
And I always had the freedom to do that because my mom trusted me a lot. So she was like, party on, go have fun with
Love
your
it.
friends. And again, because I had such a core group of friends, it was, all the parents trusted that we were doing the right thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm a band geek as well. What did you play?
Everyone's surprised, but I played the trumpet
Heck yeah.
from end of 5th grade until my senior year. Once graduation day was over, though, I have not really played since.
Kind
So
of happens. It's hard to like play when you play with a band and then you play by yourself. You're like, it's just
it's
not
not the
it.
same. It's not the same. I miss the feeling of playing in a concert band, especially because you become one when you're playing and just you feel the emotions in the music. It's just a different feeling than being in the audience. Still love going to performances, but when I go to performances, I'm like, oh, I'm a little jealous.
Right?
Because I miss that
Done
feeling.
it so many times. Yeah. After high school, you came to Grace. What was that transition like?
It was very good. I loved that I was finally able to have those Christian friends that I had been praying for years and that I'd been wanting in my life. Freshman year was a ball here. I had so much fun. Some trials, of course, because you're getting used to things. I was learning how to balance 2 jobs. My sister was getting married and all the other crazy things that are involved in freshman year. But it was a fantastic time. And my sophomore year, I ended up being in a K1. So if someone lives in K1, it's the best. I lived with my 3 now very best friends. And when people saw us in the same apartment, they went, how's that going to work?
Really?
People told us you're not going to be friends at the end of living together. And we all went through really hard seasons our sophomore year, but it's the fondest year we remember at Grace just because of the friendship that we all had and the support system we had through each other and the late nights of laughing, the late nights of crying together, just the fellowship we had in there. It's just very sacred to us now. And we know that we can comfort each other through all those seasons. Then my junior and senior year, I was off campus and I was busy all the time with whether it was work, school, or internship. But yeah, I think every year is different. Every year is a different experience and you need to expect that. It's not going to be the same feelings, but you're going to learn how to make each year great no matter what. Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I had the same mindset of like, oh, this year's going to be just like last year. Just like a complete curveball. I'm like, oh, I'm not ready.
So I think the transition is constant.
That's
you
true.
transition from high school into college, but then the next year will look different than the previous.
Yeah. What were some challenges during your time at Grace?
Challenges, oof. I would say I had to learn how to be confrontational because I was very passive in the sense of I'm a people pleaser. I don't want to ruffle your feathers. If I ruffle your feathers, then we're going to have issues. So whether that was in the workplace or with my friendships, I had to learn how to stand up for myself and advocate for myself and say like, I don't enjoy being treated that way, or this person shouldn't be treating others this way. So we need to stand up for that. And that was huge learning curve for me. But yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest growth that I had.
Yeah. So you graduated in 2019. What has life been like since college?
Life has been pretty nice. Like I mentioned earlier, I was a caregiver for a while, but we took time off. I lived in Canada for a little bit because at the time my boyfriend Ethan went back Ethan Partridge, he went back to Canada to work at camp full time, and I decided to work at camp as well. and then we got engaged that summer, which was fun, and then we came back, and then we got married in May of 2020, and I was still searching for a full-time position during that whole time. I did not find my full-time position until March of 2021. So
Okay.
there was obviously COVID pushed back a lot of things.
Yeah.
We didn't get to have the wedding we necessarily
Mhm.
wanted, and then it was waiting on a job that I've been wanting, and no one's really hiring because everyone's working from home trying
Mhm.
to figure out what to do. And
Right.
then they started hiring again, but it wasn't necessarily jobs that I was interested in. So again, all God's timing with everything and God providing. So
Mhm. Is your battery dying?
We're good.
Okay. I was really scared. I was like, do you not have your cord? Um, is it different than you thought it would be after graduation?
yes,
How
I
so?
think I think we all leaving Grace, we're like, we have our degree, we're gonna get the jobs that we want, and it's gonna be great. And no, there's trials. No,
Mhm.
you're going to have to tweak your resume a billion times. You're going to get a ton of reject letters. To all of you who didn't, bless you. But to all of us who do get the reject,
Uh,
um, you're you're not going to be employed there. It stings, it hurts,
mhm.
and you have to learn how to wrestle with feeling maybe I've peaked.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm only meant to be this. Maybe I'm only meant to be a caregiver. Maybe my worth is only at the level of a Starbucks barista. And if that is you, that's okay. But for me, I'm like, I know that God has something else for me. I'm just so impatient. And so
Hmm.
really lean into God's timing is the best timing. And it's so hard to do that in the moment.
Mhm.
Lots of tears, lots of being like, okay, God, I've waited a year and a half. Hello, still here.
Yoo-hoo.
Yeah. um, but I can't explain how it sounds silly, but how magical it felt to watch
Hmm.
all the things that I'd been praying for start unfolding because Ethan and I were diligent about waiting for God's timing. And
Hmm.
it was very hard and very straining on finances, straining on our relationships, straining on our relationship with God at some points, just because
Yeah.
we were like, okay, Lord, we've listened, we've waited, we
Hmm.
thought we were following your plan. Are we not? And where do you want us? And so I would say don't be discouraged after college because it's a new season of life. You're
Mhm.
kind of thrown out into the real world after you've been in, especially if you're at Grace, you've been in the
Yeah.
Grace bubble and it's this tight knit community. Friendships look different.
Mhm.
You have to learn how to get involved in your community to have a community. I think that's
Yeah.
really important. Don't isolate yourself. Don't.
Hmm.
Um, Especially during COVID with people working at home and all of that. Like,
Yeah.
find a community, find a church family, and it makes a world of a difference.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's so true. How has God directed your path during post-college confusion with jobs and life?
Um, he definitely will close doors when he needs to close doors,
Hmm.
I will say. And things that was like, I'm banking on this because I'm qualified. They didn't happen because
Hmm.
sometimes your rejection letters are, you're overqualified.
Hmm.
Thanks for
Wow.
trying. And it's like, okay, well, here I am.
Yep.
I'll go to something else.
Hmm.
But God, even if you don't see it, he is leading every single step.
Mhm.
And then I feel like it's in hindsight, you're like, that's why you had me do that. It did
Yeah.
not make sense. That's why you kept
Mhm.
me here way longer than I wanted to be. It makes sense now.
Yeah.
And again, just watching the beauty of it all unfold was
Mhm.
pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's so true. I've had so many of those moments. So now we have our truth bomb. You did it with me. I love that. What is some advice you have for our current students, but also fellow graduates?
Current students, your salvation does not depend on the paper you're writing.
Ooh.
I remember many nights where I was just at my wit's end. My paper's due at midnight. I have 10 minutes. Like, I'm not
Hmm.
going to finish. And just thinking, I know I'm writing a Bible paper and I am finishing it and I'm turning it in, and I need to be okay with the quality that I'm turning in, because I have prayed for the Lord to stretch my time. He honored it. And I need to accept that no matter what grade I get, I still have God in my life. Jesus is still my savior.
Yeah.
This paper ultimately doesn't matter
Right.
at the end of the day. And I think we get too hung up on papers need to be turned in and stop focusing on what is that Bible paper about.
Right.
Just because of the rush of getting it. And so sometimes I have to go, my salvation does not depend on this paper. And that really helped. And also just praying for God to stretch your time.
Yeah.
If you're like me, I had 2 jobs throughout all of college, and managing relationships, whether it's friends or significant others, family, all of that. It's just stressful. And if you pray for the Lord to stretch your time and you're honoring your relationship with Him, He will make a way for you. And that was really important. And also just being thankful during your season at Grace or at other colleges. But I remember just when I worked in the kitchen, just thanking the Lord. Thank you, God, that I have this job. Thank you for the student that dirtied this dish, because they matter too. And just praying over them and just making the most of it. And for graduate students, it's okay that if you're not in the place that you want to be right now, it's okay that if you're in this gray area of what's next, just start praying about it. Go to scripture and be content in knowing God does have a plan. Don't stop pursuing the things you are passionate about, even when you're stuck. And let the Lord lead you. Don't lead yourself, because it won't get you anywhere.
Amen. All right. Well, sadly, that's all we have for you today. But thank you so much for joining. And as always, listen up.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to be a part of our live audience, recordings take place Mondays at 1:30 p.m. in the Quiet Room. If you would like to be a guest on our show, send us an email at listenup@gracechristian.edu. See you next week on the Listen Up podcast.